guess in terms of years, the cattle industry isn't that old in Western Canada, but if you put it in terms of toil and vision, it's been around for quite a while. Long before the first plow hit the ground, the cattlemen were here, and they had more to do with the settling of the West than any other part of agriculture. So it's our job in this generation to keep that heritage alive. And that's what this drive's all about. To preserve the history, tradition, and heritage of the Old West, the Canadian Rodeo Historical Association and the Stockmen's Memorial Foundation joined forces to build a Western Heritage Center, a $10 million home and showpiece for each. Cattle drives were common events in days gone by. In 1881, Senator Matthew Cochrane purchased 6,800 head of Montana cattle and had them trailed north. The answer? A fundraising cattle drive, ending with the entire herd donated to the Western Heritage Center. Sibbald Flats, in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains, is selected as the staging area. We wanted to make the cow camp and drive as authentic as possible. Many original wagons have been carefully preserved and restored. Various ranch wagons are positioned on the open range so horses can be held in rope corrals. The water barrel and gunny sack is always handy just in case of grass fires. We just had to guess how many cowboys and cowgirls and cattle and horses to prepare for. On staging day, the corrals see increasing activity. We're building the herd. For weeks now, we've canvassed for cattle, phone calls, personal calls, and advertising. We'd soon know how our work would pay off. One of the first to bring his cattle is Malcolm Mackenzie, cowboy artist, sculptor, and rancher.
This red one's got a hook. Yeah, both of them. Well, they both got it. They both got it. Oh, that's all right.
The Man of Vision statue at the Cochrane Ranch is Mac's creation. He took the Hooves of History name and created a logo that caught the public imagination and started the cattle drive phones a-ringing. This project really took off when Mac created a limited edition of 50 bronzes based on his logo. He donated $1,000 from each sale to pay for promotional expenses. It was a magnificent contribution to the drive, and it came at a time when we needed it most. Brand inspectors check the cattle, cross-check the manifests and ear tags.
Outside. What's Cliff number? 1383. 1383. What does she weigh? What does that cow weigh? 13? Yeah.
Cattle liners arrive from Ponoka, Lethbridge, Olds, Medicine Hat, Stettler, Brooks, Bonnyville, High River, and from points in Saskatchewan and British Columbia.
All right, I'll take the green coffee.
The cardboard coffee. Okay. Thank you very much. You run around. I'm running. You loaded these at Rodeo this morning? Yeah.
Trail boss for the Hooves of History is lifetime cowboy Bob Hale of Bassano. Just a little quiet time to reflect on the big job ahead. This wasn't all milk cows in those pens, and he knew it would be tough to get rank range cows to behave going through the streets of Cochrane. By noon, quiet Sybiled Flats has bust wide open. Campsite tents are built to feed and shelter the fast-growing crowds. Communication vehicles pull in. The Rodeo historical trailer gets spotted in place. And the Calgary Stampede stage. Cowboys, cowgirls, stockmen, and whole families arrive all day. The campsite keeps growing. It swells with over 1,200 participants, 53 wagons, almost 100 media reps, over 200 volunteers, and 500 family members and friends. Our instant townsite population is over 2,000 now and growing. Here in the foothills, changing weather can be a problem. Suddenly, September winds hit camp. Could this be what we feared most? An early blizzard? Almost as quick as it came, it died. And we're in for great fall weather. Somebody up there is liking this cattle drive. Things just seem to happen. It seems like a huge family reunion. Most surprising is how everybody just seems to fit in. It is the most congenial, easy-to-handle bunch you'll ever meet. Good cooks. Excellent facilities and great food and drink.
$150 limited edition.
I ain't gonna work on the railroad. I ain't gonna work on the farm. Gonna lay around this shack till the mail train comes back. Then I'm rolling in my sweet baby's arms. Hey, I'm rolling in my sweet baby's arms. I'm rolling in my sweet baby's arms. Gonna lay around this shack till the mail train comes back. Then I'm rolling in my sweet
Spontaneous entertainment takes over the Calgary Stampede stage.
Yeah, I'm rolling in my
Meeting old friends, making new friends. That's what it's all about.
There by 7:30 in the morning. Make sure it's well marked. Make sure that you got your identification on it. And that's the way it'll arrive at Buckley's for you tomorrow night.
Fun and festivities last well into the night. There's ice on the water trough this morning. It takes gallons of strong hot coffee to get the chilly crowd warmed up. They wash down a huge breakfast. Dozens of volunteer cooks and helpers pitch in. They're as dedicated to this cattle drive as the cowboys.
Now, Don Edge is looking after the wagons for us, and if you've got some empty spaces there, we can fit 6 people.
A big truck is loaded with the social wranglers' tents and bedrolls. They'll be trucked to tonight's campsite.
Excuse me. There's a green bag for going out. That'd be funny.
As the morning sun climbs higher, so does the anticipation. Now the camp is one of feverish preparation. Horses are saddled, cinches tightened. Last-minute adjustments are made over and over again. The cattle seem to sense the excitement. They're anxious to get started. The horses feel it too. Teams are hitched to the wagons and ready to go. 50 experienced drovers from ranches across the West will herd the cattle. Then, at last, the signal. Let's move 'em out. The Hooves of History cattle drive is on its way.
You got to ride up and help him in the same way the fellow behind you. You just ride back and forth and help for him.
In the tradition of all cattle drives, the chuck and bedroll wagons lead the way. We're in a vast, clean land, but even here there are fences and roads. Our first leg is along the highway. Wide valleys, forested slopes, in a multicolored coat of fall colors, provide a striking setting. There's a new vista over each hill. Nostalgia is coming in waves. Nearly forgotten sounds of the trail are fostering emotions that will build as the day progresses. The first test for the working cowhands is the Trans-Canada Highway. The herd, the riders, and the wagon train must funnel through the underpass. It's a bottleneck, but the cow savvy of the hand-picked cowboys make it look easy. Tourists get an unexpected thrill as they pull over to watch the drive pass by. It's a sure bet many wish they could saddle up and join in. Sorry, folks, there'll be no second chance. There'll never be another drive quite like the Hooves of History.
I wouldn't miss it for the world. Anybody who's not here, it's too late. It's great.
Riders and wagons come from all across the country, even as far away as Newfoundland and Quebec.
Air Command to Nova Scotia.
We're joined by riders from 10 states, including Florida, New York, Wyoming, North Dakota, and Montana. They're returning a visit by our cowboys to the Great Montana Centennial Drive in 1989. No doubt about it, the drive is turning out exactly as advertised, a cattle drive, a people event. Noon camp means leisure and grazing time for the cattle, and lunchtime for everyone. For the tenderfeet, it's stretch and walk around time. Many have never ridden before. Others are riding for the first time in years. They'll be taking short steps for a few days. Morning came early for some of the cowboys, and for others, last night lasted quite a while. It's a good chance to swap some more yarns. You'd be amazed at the number of times you'll hear, "I remember when." A few minor repairs to tack and gear, and a whole lot of reflection on Western traditions and family figures of only one or two generations past.
I was born and raised on a ranch just south of this country, and it's nice to get back home again to see a lot of good friends and family and get out into the country. It brings back a lot of really good memories.
The Western Heritage Center has always said that it's a living museum, and this is part of the living history. The fact that even today we can experience some of the things that our forefathers experienced years ago.
Let's hit the trail. What a trail it is. Raw prairie, wide open spaces, clear skies, pine trees spiked in among aspen and willow. Rampant colors of September contrast with the lushness of the range. Horses, cattle, and wagons, as far as the eye can see. Our drive stretches out over the prairie, a living, moving mass of animals and riders.
To me, this ride here was really exciting. When I was back on the hill here this morning, I got to the back on a saddle horse, and I watched all the vehicles ahead of me and all the saddle horses. It's a sight you may never see again.
Not far out of Noon Camp, the trail snakes across the foot of a rugged rock face and through a narrow gorge. Trail scout Norman Edge couldn't have found a more colorful route. Thousands of rolls of film are used at this spectacular canyon. The cattle and riders are forced into a long, slender line by the natural restriction of the trail. It's a setting made to order for the movie makers. It's on to the watering hole. The cattle have been on the trail for approximately 5 hours. A chance to have a drink is welcomed by all the livestock. The rolling foothills country offers a chance to see Alberta in all her majesty. Not even the organizers expected that nature would show us such magnificence. Small wonder the locals call this God's country. Buckley Ranch has a perfect campsite. High on a hill, in the lee of a long stand of poplar, we'll share an incomparable view with the welcome shelter of the trees. Setup begins with finding your bedroll and tent. With over 1,200 horses in camp, you better remember which tree you tie to. Now, a bale of hay for your trail partner is the first order of business. Some of these folks arrived in comfortable motorhomes, but tonight they'll sleep in a tent and love it. In short order, it's Tent City. The camp stretches across the hilltop for half a mile or more. Hundreds of tents, every size, style, and color.
It's a tremendous feeling to be a part of something like this. We were talking about that coming over the hill today. It's my kind of people and the things I love to do, and I have my family with me, and I love it. I'm impressed with it.
And everything held together pretty good. We lost some spokes out of one wagon wheel today, but we'll almost like to get it fixed before morning and getting back on the road again.
Kind of tough luck, huh?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Oh, you're going to be all right then. Good, good.
The Working Cowhands Camp is its own lesson in history.
How many cattle did the bar you run at the peak?
In the summer of 1906, they had 40 or 45,000 head of cattle on the open range.
Oh, yeah.
And they had a breeding herd of 12,000 head in Chihuahua, Old Mexico.
Each camp draws their own circle of storytellers.
It's too bad we couldn't record all the stories that are told here, and I bet there's at least a dozen stories in every tent.
No school book can compare with the legends and lore that will be shared tonight. The first day has gone well. The herd behavior is all you'd want it to be, and tonight's camp is superb in every way. The morning camp at Buckley's sees another fine September day at its very beginning. The Working Cowhands Campfire is the setting for a breakfast performance of Ivan Dane's newly written song, specially prepared for the occasion.
That's how a cowboy's made. Out in Cochrane, Alberta, the Western Heritage Center shines, and the wagon trains rumble, and the thunder of hooves keep time, and the cattle, they are trailed under a rocky mountain sky. The hooves of history cattle drive brings back the days gone by.
Well, having traveled the world and photographed horses and painted the horses like Secretariat and the Calgary Stampede check wagon races, this is a tough one because there's so many choices there to choose, and we got all day tomorrow. I could get at least 20 paintings out of what I saw today. It's the most magnificent thing I've ever been involved in.
As the drive moves out, there's new sights and new experiences. Crossing the Jumping Pound Creek is another great photo opportunity. The The steep trail here is a test for the wagon drivers. Those without brakes rely on the braking power of saddle horses, cowboys, and their ropes. With over 50 wagons on the drive, it was inevitable that trouble would strike. A broken wagon tongue allows the wagon to run up on the horse's heels. They spook. Teamster Pete Marcus of Lethbridge is thrown from the wildly lurching wagon. Quick action by the cowboys settled the team down. The wagon is pulled to the side. For Pete, the drive is over. He's battered and bruised. He has a broken arm, but thankfully, he'll be all right.
My grandfather, Charlie Sharples, came into Alberta, which was then the Northwest Territories, in 1878. And he came with some of the first cattle that the Cochrane Ranching Company purchased in Montana. He had come out as a young man from Quebec at the age of 22. And I think when the Cochrane outfit had bought their cattle, they hired on drovers and people to chase them north. And that's how my granddad ended up in Alberta and subsequently ranched here for his life. And my father took over that ranch. And so that's why I'm really excited to be here.
When I was 21, that would be 1922, I went to break horses for the Bayou there, break saddle horses. And then that fall, they sent me down to work on the beef, on the Bow River beef roundup. That was the last year the Bayou ran a wagon. And this morning reminded me very much of it. Up there about 5 or 6 o'clock, And we'd had a breakfast, and they'd rope those horses out of a corral. About all they could tell was the horse's ears, as far as I could see.
The trail crosses a wide sweep of level prairie on our way to Noon Camp. The Noon Camp is set by the jumping pound on the 100-year-old Wineglass Ranch. The size of the camp, the huge number of horses and wagons, and the cattle herd is dwarfed by the massive hill that the drive will have to climb this afternoon.
Yeah, I think it's a terrific success. Just look around you. Look at the people. I don't think there's been as many dudes gathered together in the history of the country.
It's just great. Very professionally organized. You know what you're doing. You know where you're going. And it just couldn't be any better. It's the biggest one I was on.
Well, there's the rodeo cowboy, and there's the drugstore cowboy, and there's the ranch cowboy. Yeah, so I guess the real true one is the old-time ranch cowboy. He done his own rough riding and breaking his horses, and he had to rope his horse out. The old-timers, they were all good ropers and riders, and they were tough guys. They had to be.
The Cattle Drive is a people event for participants and spectators. Tourists crowd every viewpoint, young and old alike, enviously catching a glimpse of the past and recording history in the making. The procession twists over the ridge in epic fashion. The tourists will have this view etched in their memory. The final leg of our cattle drive is underway. It's back to the present. Back to power lines, fences, roads, and traffic. The town of Cochrane, home of the famed historic ranch and site for the Western Heritage Center, is alive with excitement. Over 10,000 residents and visitors line the streets to greet the drive. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to experience firsthand Old West ways and traditions. Its memory will linger over the years. Truly, it's history in the making.
Out on Los Ranchos Grandes, down in old Mexico, the vaquero swings his riata with his espuela and el freno. His remuda de caballo spins his maguey with so much ease. Sings a love song on his flamenco guitar to his senorita C. Out in the state of Texas, a long century ago, there became a breed of man the history books all know. He was fearless as a lion and tight, twisted as rawhide. Trailed birds all day, kept watch at night with a smile deep inside. He was called a cowboy and a very special man, with his high-top boots and his big-brimmed hat, and pride being a tough hand. For he could ride and he could roll to the finest of the groove. and on his horse pushed a nation forth on the hooves of history. In the 1870s and the 80s, the big herds crossed the 49. Tom Lynch, the famous trail boss, and John Ware, the black cowboy so fine. Senator Cochrane, the OH Ranch, the A7, and the Bayou gained fame. Now the prairie wool grass grows, and the bull still flows, and their names forever remain. There remains this cowboy, alive and well today. From the northern lights to the southern nights, their songs and poems still tell their way. His saddle and his tack and his spirit are his trade. He is tough and he is gentle, 'cause that's how a cowboy's made. Out in Cochrane, Alberta, the Western Heritage Center shines, and the wagon trains rumble, and the thunder of hooves keep time, and the cattle, they are trailed under a Rocky Mountain sky. The hooves of history cattle drive brings back the days gone by. He's still called a cowboy and a very special man, with his high-top boots and his big-brimmed hat and pride of being a top hand. For he can ride and he can roll to the finest of the breed, and on his horse looks back with pride on the hooves of history.
Friday evening is highlighted by another round of excitement with beer garden, barbecue, and socializing.
Oh, we're very proud of it. I don't think there's a way in the world that you could do it any better. It took everyone to do it. It wasn't just one person effort, you know, and everyone was behind it 100%. It's just special.
A significant feature of the Hooves of History is the large number of young people participating. The traditions of the West will one day be in their hands. The town of Cochrane proves to be a very genial host. Mayor Vern Friesen joins us at the downtown pancake breakfast.
Is it too slow?
Thousands of visitors rub shoulders with our cowboys and cowgirls. Superb entertainment continues. Everybody's having fun. Miss Molly has the crowd in the palm of her hand. The Calgary Stampede's role is an example of everyone's desire to help.
We got a warrant to bring this man to justice. It's pretty ugly. Get on out here.
Uh-oh.
Get your hands up. Does anybody
That's not nothing. They got you.
Shut up.
Yes, sir.
Does anybody know who this man is? What we're going to do to Lindsay here for stealing cattle is we're just going to put that rope, come on. We put that rope around his neck. We're going to string him up, and he's going to kick and fight. He'll probably strangle himself to death.
When you get back home, all week to the middle with a cowboy yell. Thank you.
The cattle auction is a feature event. Dignitaries and auctioneers from across the province are on hand.
Let me bring greetings, first of all, on behalf of Premier Don Getty and the Government of Alberta, and also add greetings and congratulations from the Honourable Shirley McClellan, the Associate Minister, who really wanted to be here today. It was tied up in some commitments in Edmonton. I think what you people have pulled off, is something tremendous. You came up with an idea that caught the imagination and the interest of people all across this province and some outside the province. Now let's get on and see how much money you make.
Thank you very much, Ernie.
Make it a presentation here to one of the greatest all-time ranchers and Western people in this area. He tells me he's one of the last of the 3 cowboys that rode at the Bayou, still living cowboy, and I think he's one of the greatest cattlemen we've ever had.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're selling by the dollar. We're going to sell the first 4 head, and I want you to know that the reason that I was chosen to sell the first animal is I'm the youngest auctioneer.
The magic of the drive continues to play on human emotions. Cattle prices reach well above the prevailing market.
I got him at 45, 7.5. I got him at 7.5. Now 7.5 down, 45, 7.5 down. Who'll give me $5,000? I got him at 5. Now 2.5. I sold him, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, there's no way that this thing would have ever developed out and become a success without the help of the auctioneers, the auction markets, and the landowners that just really went all out and did a terrific job.
It was quite a massive undertaking, preparing all the food and gathering all the food for the drive. We gathered probably more and cooked over 1.5 tons of potatoes, 2 tons of meat, over 12,000 pancakes. One morning we served over 5,000 cups of coffee before everybody got finally on the drive and moving out towards Cochrane.
Sunday morning brings an inspirational cowboy church service. A meeting to give thanks. Thanks for a beautiful and bountiful land. For congenial, generous people. For outstanding fall weather. For all the favorable circumstances which guarantee the ultimate success of our Hooves of History project.
We've never met people that have been more hospitable and more kind, more generous, more anxious to do everything they possibly can for you than I've been seeing here.
Just nice to be a part of this.
Whenever cowboys gather, rodeo action is sure to follow. An invitational rodeo is staged to culminate our Hooves of History. Top cowboys from across the country give their best performance. Rodeo contractors donate their best stock. Many cowboys turn back most or all of their winnings. The huge crowd is said to be the largest ever at the Cochrane Rodeo grounds. Now, the hardest part of the entire cattle drive. Time to pack up and head for home. The realization this historic event is over is a very sad occasion. Nobody wants to leave. It was so much fun. Such an emotional, satisfying get-together. Memories linger, and the hope is expressed by everyone. We must do this again. The part played by the media was large indeed. Their response to the drive was overwhelming. The ad-lib comments indicate the enthusiasm that the drive has generated.
The Western Cultural Center that will preserve the history of the West is a delightful cause, in my opinion, and
sure makes you proud to watch all that.
The drive is over. The cattle sold. But the trail is indelibly stamped into the memories of all who saw these 5 days unfold. Many old-time brands were present in the drive. The goal was to keep our traditions and spirit alive. Artist Patrick Douglas Cox will record his impressions on canvas. The cattle drive will ensure the Western Heritage Center will be built. The center will be a living interpretive display of the cowboy, his horse, and the sport of rodeo. It will be a memorial to our hardy pioneers and the dynamic cattle industry.